Good afternoon and welcome to episode 32 of the Jacksonian. As I am yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me is the editor and senior writer of Bucknuts247 and the co-host of Buckeyes Live every Wednesday morning at Ohio State football at the Voice College football, the one and only Steve Helwagen. As we'll be going over what's going on with the Ohio State football program and the basketball program with Jake Diabler. And we'll be going over what's going on Ryan Day. Can the Buckeyes beat Michigan this season? Stay tuned. How you doing this afternoon, Steve?
I'm doing great, Jackson. What's going on?
Oh, it's going pretty good. Just going over the latest on Ohio State. And before we start the show, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I guess I'm a lifer here at Ohio State. I went to school at Ohio State in the late 1980s, started covering the teams for the student newspaper, and haven't left yet. It's like 36 or 37 years full time on basketball, and this will be my 30th consecutive season full time on football, and I've only missed 4 games in the last 30 years, maybe something like that. So, yeah, I missed a game this past year when my niece was getting married. I did not go to Purdue with Ohio State for that game. And that was the first game I'd missed back to 2001. So, when my daughter was being born. So, yeah, I'm 56 and I've been doing it basically my entire adult life. So, probably got a few years left in me, and we'll see where it takes me from here.
Well, I will say, I bet it was fun getting to cover the Ohio State era and Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, but like the John Cooper era, it was just exhausting. But how did it feel covering the last game of the Earl Bruce era, like while you were a student, seeing them upset Michigan?
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. I was at that game in 1987 at Michigan. I was not actually working for the student newspaper at that time. I picked that up probably the following year in 1988, which was John Cooper's first year. I wrote a few columns that year before really getting into it the following year. But yeah, I was there. I go back I mean, when I was a little kid, Woody Hayes was the coach. And then obviously Earl took over in 1979, and his last year was 1987. My second year as a student at Ohio State, and what we see now of Ohio State football, it's a far cry from where things were in the mid 80s and the late 80s. Certainly under John Cooper, they had a 4-6-1 season his first year in 1988, and now if they lose 6 games in 5 years, they want the coach fired. So it is kind of crazy right now. The expectations at Ohio State have never been any higher, probably going into this upcoming season than any season that I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, I mean that's what I wanted to go over a little bit about. Is there like a Ryan Day John Cooper comparison in a way?
Well, you look at it, and Cooper did a lot of great things eventually. His first, I guess he was the coach for 13 years. His first 5 or 6 years were pretty bleak, but eventually he started bringing in one great class after another. And eventually, 93, 95, 96, 98, those are four of the better teams in Ohio State football history, and he coached them. They didn't win the national championship in any of those seasons, but they had a ton of NFL players that played there. Eddie George won the Heisman Trophy in 1995. They were the number 2 ranked team at the end of the season in both 96 and 98, and were number 1 for most of the season in 98 before a home loss to Michigan State. So there were some good things, I think, in that time. They beat Jake Plummer and Arizona State in the Rose Bowl to end the 1996 season. Dramatic win. They scored the winning touchdown with like 15 seconds remaining in the game. So there were some good things that happened during that time. It just, Cooper kind of had it at this level, And then obviously Tressel came in and he had it at this level. And then Urban Meyer came in and he had it at this level. So now it's on Ryan Day to see if he can take it from another level above what Urban Meyer had it at. But it's been incremental. And obviously, Ohio State has been one of the dominant forces in college football really in this last 30 years. Back to 1993 or 94, they've been one of the winningest programs and one of the dominant forces with conference championship, major bowl wins, 2 national championships. They've been right there in the top 5, top 10 as a fixture, both recruiting rankings and end of the year poll rankings, certainly. So, you want to compare what Cooper and Ryan Day have done against Michigan. Cooper was 2-10-1 in his 13 seasons against Michigan. Day has coached for 5 seasons at Ohio State. They've only played Michigan 4 times in his watch, and they're 1-3 in those games. The game in 2020 obviously was canceled. So, you look at it, and obviously, if they'd won one of these games the last 3 years, maybe they go on and contend for a national championship instead of Michigan. But the way it is, it's been Michigan's had the upper hand these last 3 years, and we'll see if they can get the tables turned on Michigan this upcoming November.
Yeah, and I was thinking about some famous coaches that have had a losing record against their rivals. I know Matt Brown lost 5 straight to Oklahoma at one point when he was at Texas. Ara Parseghi, the only year where Notre Dame beat USC that didn't result in a national title was 1965. And, Tom Osborne, when he was at Nebraska, they were losing to Oklahoma when the Sooners had Barry Switzer. I wonder if those coaches would have gotten fired if we had social media back in those years.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, on one hand, Ryan Day has the Ohio State program at an elite level in terms of recruiting and the machinery that they have in place. And now with name, image, and likeness payments to players and prospects, I think that Ohio State's going to continue to do pretty well. And they've won on the field. I mean, the last 3 years, they've gone 11-2, 3 years in a row, 2 wins over Notre Dame here in the last 2 years alone. So Day has lined up, and he's beaten just about everybody. He has not lost a game to Penn State yet. I think he's 5-0 against Penn State. So that's a pretty good barometer right there. So they've done pretty well. They lost to Clemson in a playoff game, came back the following year, beat Clemson in a playoff game, lost to Alabama in a national championship game, lost to Georgia in a playoff game, kind of a tough one to blow. I think it was an 17 or 18-point lead in the fourth quarter, and let Georgia come back and win that game. But by and by, I think he's been a great coach at Ohio State. He's got him positioned well, certainly for the future. He's got a great coaching staff around him and really improved it by adding Chip Kelly, the former UCLA head coach, walked away from a $5 or $6 million a year job to be a coordinator at Ohio State. That's really something.
And Chip Kelly got tired of the UCLA situation real quick. He was not sitting there just coaching 2024 and then be told, "Oh, I could get fired any day." That's not happening. But it just got me thinking about the working relationship that he's got with Ryan Day. Now he was the former teacher for Ryan Day at New Hampshire, but now it's the mentor working for the protege in Columbus starting in 2024. Is there going to be like some issues? Is there anything good happening from that relationship exactly?
No, I think that you look at it, Chip Kelly has had Ryan Day by his side as an assistant coach at both of his NFL stops, Philadelphia and San Francisco. And although neither of those really, went the way anybody would have hoped for them, I think that Chip Kelly looked at this as a chance to kind of repay Ryan Day for his allegiance to him over the years at different locations and come in given what's happened with Ohio State, in recent years, to be so close to getting over the top and winning another national championship. I mean, you think about it, the one thing Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, both of them have never done is win a national championship or a Super Bowl. And this would be, if they're able to put it all together this coming season, the first national championship for both of them. And I think that that is a goal that they are both chasing. They don't talk about it a whole ton because, you got to get there. First of all, you got to win game one, then game two, and stack the wins on top of each other to get into the playoff, to win the playoff. But and you made a great point earlier. You got to beat Michigan as part of this as well, or the Ohio State fan base won't be happy with you. But I look at it that it's a completely positive thing. That's how Ryan Day and Chip Kelly are looking at it. That they say there may be disagreements, there may be arguments, but at the end of the day, they hug it out, and it's the Ohio State offense. It's not Chip Kelly's offense or anybody in particular's offense. It's the Ohio State offense that's got to pull through in the tough situations. And last year was a bit of a down year for Ohio State offensively. Was not as productive, obviously, as they had been in past years. And I think Ryan Day wants to get back to that this upcoming season. They've got the defense in place to be just spectacular. So we'll see what direction it goes.
Well, and that brings me to my next point about the schedule. So I've got the schedule pulled up. Now, the non-conference schedule looks pretty easy. Thank goodness you don't have to go to Connect Stadium to play Iowa. I mean, that's a scary place right there. Because if you got to go to Connect Stadium before you play Oregon, that's trap game zone right then and there. But you got the Donald Ducks on October 12th. You got to go to Eugene, so you're in trouble there. That's not good. But you got Nebraska, Penn State. I mean, they can't exactly win the big games. Purdue is coming to Columbus, and we got the Wrigley Field game. How do you feel about Ohio State going to Wrigley Field to play Northwestern?
Yeah, in the last probably 15 years, Northwestern has played a game there every other year, every third year. They've played Illinois there. They've played some other teams there. And you kind of look at that when it comes up, and you say, boy, that would be kind of neat. And I'm a Reds fan, so I've been to see the Reds play the Cubs in Wrigley Field. I've been there for other games with the Cubs at Wrigley Field, and it really is one of the great sporting venues in our country. If anybody's never been there, it's just kind of sits in the middle of a neighborhood. There are some bars around it, obviously. And,
did you ever get to take me out to the ball game at Wrigley Field?
Oh yeah. Been there for that. And I grew up as a kid watching the Cubs on WGN. It was just something that you did. If you were a sports fan during the day, you're sitting at home, you're bored, you just put on a Cubs game a lot of times when they're playing there at Wrigley Field. So to me, I think for Ohio State fans, it'll be a great treat. My guess is there'll be out of 42,000 people at Wrigley Field, probably about half and half Northwestern and half Ohio State. There's a lot of Ohio State alumni in Chicago, and those tickets will be very pricey. I bet they're $200 to $300 on the ticket scalping market. I bet the tickets will also be extremely high for that game, October the 12th at Oregon at Autzen Stadium. Ohio State has played there before. It was the dedication game at Autzen Stadium back in the 1960s. Ohio State went in there and beat Oregon. And Ohio State has won the first 9 meetings with Oregon until a few years ago. Oregon came into Ohio Stadium, I guess it was 2021, and beat the Buckeyes in Columbus, beat them pretty handily. Yeah, it was quite a game there at Ohio Stadium. Oregon basically lined up and ran all over Ohio State that day. I think it was 35-21 may have been the final score. So Ohio State will be looking for payback here 3 years later. And obviously now it's a Big Ten game. And Ohio State wants to welcome Oregon to the Big Ten with a a rude welcome. I can tell you that the non-conference schedule is a bit of a departure for Ohio State to play the likes of Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall. Typically, there is a non-conference major opponent like Notre Dame the last 2 years. They'll play Texas, I believe, next year. The reason this came up was they were supposed to play at Washington this year in a non-conference game, but when 2 or 3 years ago USC and UCLA joined the Big Ten, Ohio State decided to drop the Washington series because there was a potential that Ohio State would have to go to USC or UCLA this year. They didn't have the schedule written up when they first joined the league, and they didn't want to have to make 2 trips to the West Coast in the same season. So they dumped out of Washington and were able to fill that date, maybe with Akron. I think may have been the last minute replacement that filled that spot. So like Michigan the last 2 years, Michigan did not play a Power 5 non-conference opponent the last 2 years. They are playing one this year with Texas, and Ohio State is not playing one this year, which is, as I said, a bit of a departure.
Yeah, I'm sad about Ohio State not having a Power 5 school this year on their non-con, but it's like you said, it had a lot to do with the Big Ten conference realignment.
Yeah.
So, but next year, we're back to seeing Ohio State tough non-conference schedules. It'll be fun seeing Ohio State, Texas in 2025.
Yeah, I think it's Texas. I guess with Michigan playing Texas this year, I wonder if they're playing – I don't have it in front of me, the 2025 schedule, but seems to me, I thought it was Texas, but I could be off base.
I just can't wait for that future home and home with the for Ohio State, Alabama.
Yeah.
Bama, man, I'm looking forward to that game.
That'll be outstanding. Looking forward to it. I've never been to Tuscaloosa, so looking forward to that. Been to Birmingham, flew in there one time, but looking forward to getting to a game at Alabama. I heard so many great things about it.
It can get pretty loud, that I can guarantee you, but it's pretty fun. But we got Michigan, of course, that big bugaboo. So I've got the stats from 2001 to 2019. The Buckeyes were 18-2. Yes, I'm counting the 2010 victory NCAA. So they're 18-2 versus Michigan, but ever since then, not a single win against Michigan in this decade. Can this year be the year where the Buckeyes get it done?
Well, if they don't get it done this year, you kind of wonder when they would. I mean, Michigan lost so many great players off of that roster that won the national championship, as well as obviously the quarterback's gone, the running back's gone. And, Jim Harbaugh is gone, and so many of the assistant coaches left as well. So Sherrone Moore takes over the program, and they've got a tough schedule this year. They have to play Texas and Washington and Ohio State, and it's going to be a rough go, I think, for Michigan this coming year without all those people who won the national championship last year. So we'll see how they do with a new quarterback, a new head coach, although Moore does have experience. He led Michigan to a couple of huge wins last year, Penn State and Ohio State, in his time as the acting head coach when Harbaugh was on suspension. So he's got a little bit of experience in the big chair, but now we'll see how he does with the full-time moniker, and now he's running the program. But I think it stacks up well for Ohio State. They had so many guys come back off last year's team, so many draft-eligible guys who could have left after their junior year decided to return. And it's going to be off the chain, I think, when Michigan comes to Ohio State there in November. It's going to be one of the most memorable, I think, home games and situations in the modern era. The Buckeyes potentially could be playing for a 12-0 regular season to wrap up their spot in the Big Ten championship game. A little bit of a departure this year. No longer divisional play in the Big Ten. It will strictly be the top 2 teams by conference record will play each other in the conference championship game. And it just makes you wonder what's going to happen with the tiebreakers if you have a 3 or 4-way tie at the top with 8-1 teams or whatever. How do you figure out which of those two teams are going to go play each other with 18 teams and some of them not playing each other? You kind of set yourself up for quite a mess if it gets to be a 3-way tie or a 4-way tie at the top, but or a 3 or 4-way tie for second, and you have one clear regular season champion, maybe who's 9-0, and then 3 teams tied at 8-1. How do you separate them? So that's going to be a tough one for Tony Petitti, the commissioner, to come up with the tie-breaking protocol to figure that one out. But cross that bridge when we come to it. Week 13, that's when you'd love to be playing. But obviously, you want to get into the playoff as a conference champion, get that bye, and go straight, obviously, to the quarterfinal round, the final 8, which will be played December 31st to January 1st. That's really why you want to win your conference championship, is to secure that bye in the new format.
Well, there's a solution for the tiebreaker for the second place teams that are tied. The strength of victories.
Okay.
So I think that'll help right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to go over a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses. What's it looking like for the Buckeyes football team? And I hear that the O-line is meh, but what do you think, Steve?
Well, we'll start on offense, and obviously they brought in Will Howard, transferred from Kansas State, to take over the quarterback position. He's a guy that won the Big 12 championship in 2022 at Kansas State. They upset TCU, which was undefeated in the conference championship game, and advanced, won the Big 12 championship. And now as a fifth-year senior, he wants to play at Ohio State. They lost Kyle McCord, who started last season to the transfer portal. He went to Syracuse. You got 2 great running backs, Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Judkins came in from Ole Miss, and both those guys will go over the 3,000-yard plateau in their career this year, which is quite an accomplishment. Wide receiver, you have Emeka Egbuka. He turned down a chance to go to the NFL. You lose Marvin Harrison Jr., but you add the nation's #1 overall prospect in Jeremiah Smith from Florida, wide receiver. He came in this spring and was outstanding, and I would say he'll be in the starting lineup on day 1, barring something unforeseen, I would think. So that all the skill positions look strong. The offensive line was Achilles' heel for Ohio State last year. They have 4 of the starters back. Josh Simmons will be back at left tackle. Excuse me. Donovan Jackson will be back at left guard. They brought over Seth McLaughlin from Alabama. He's going to be the center. The center last year, Carson Hinsman, he could be a guard on this team. And then you've got Josh Fryer, who was the right tackle last year. He'll be back. So those guys all need to be much better than they were last year. People will remember the Missouri game in the Cotton Bowl. They couldn't protect the quarterbacks. In the Michigan game, they didn't do that great of a job in that game either. So those were the 2 games Ohio State lost last year. The offensive line did not play that great in either one of them. So if they get better play out of that unit, the offense should be back putting up huge numbers this year. Defensively, they think they're going to have one of the best defenses in the country. All 11 starting spots seem to be pretty much set. 6 or 7, 8 of those guys back from last year. JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer at defensive end, Tyleik Williams, and Ty Hamilton at defensive tackle. Then you have CJ Hicks or Sonny Styles, who started at safety last year. They're going to be at one linebacker spot with Cody Simon, who's got some starting experience as well. And the secondary is just lights out. You've got 3 really great corners with Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, who transferred in from Ole Miss last year, Jordan Hancock, and then you've got the Alabama transfer, Caleb Downs, who was a leading tackler for the Crimson Tide last year as a true freshman. When Nick Saban retired, he got into the portal almost immediately and picked Ohio State. And he'll be alongside Lathan Ransom. He'll be back for, I think, his 6th year, a COVID year, this upcoming season. So the defense has not been good at Ohio State in about 4 or 5 years. And I think they think they're going to be back among the very best in college football this season. So you add it all together, if the offensive line plays like some people believe they can, this is a team that's going to be very hard to beat and should be right there in the Big Ten picture and certainly in the 12-team playoff at the end of the year.
Sounds to me that if I get on the bad side of the Ohio State offense and that defense, they'll chew me up like a chicken nugget.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun team to watch, I think. And obviously the schedule is really a slow burn until you get to that Oregon game on October the 12th. It's really not that difficult. And then even after that, a lot of the tougher games are in Columbus. Obviously, at Penn State looms a little bit, but Penn State's only beaten Ohio State once in 10 years under James Franklin. So he really has not solved Ohio State much in his tenure at Penn State. And then obviously the Buckeyes burning for revenge against both Oregon and Michigan this coming season. We'll see if they're able to pull those games out. Those appear to be the two tough ones.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing what happens in this year's edition of the Ohio State-Penn State game on November the 2nd on Fox. But I was thinking about the basketball team from this past season, 2023-2024. Holtman was a disaster, having the Buckeyes at 14-11. So then they decide, we're just going to finish this season out with Jake Diabler. What happens? Bam, they pull off an upset over Purdue in the regular season. And I got to be honest, I wish they made it to March Madness. I really do. I wish they didn't turn down the NIT bid.
No, they played in the NIT. They did.
Oh, they did? Oh,
they did, yes.
My mistake.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a great point. Holtman, for whatever reason, his biggest problem was he would lose guys, like he lost Bryce Sensabaugh and Malachi Branham as one and dones to the NBA, and he never really replaced them with transfer portal players who could play at that level. Jamison Battle came in from Minnesota and was an outstanding three-point shooter. Diebler has been the top assistant the last couple of years. His brother John played at Ohio State. Jake played at Valparaiso and is very familiar with the Drew family from their ties at Valpo and Baylor and Vanderbilt. And so he's getting the opportunity, 39 years old, prime of his coaching career, gets dropped in there as the head coach. They were 8-3 with him as the head coach after he took over. And as you noted, they beat Purdue. They went on the road. They beat Michigan State. They went on the road. They beat Rutgers. They beat Michigan. They beat guys, McCaffrey, Iowa. They beat guys that had combined something like 2,000 career wins with him as the head coach there in the stretch. After 2 Hall of Famers at least with Izzo and Matt Painter. So, I look at it that he's a young guy, energetic, breathing some life into the program. And he's got some good holdovers. Bruce Thornton, the point guard, coming back. They lost some guys in the portal, Felix Akpara, the center, Roddy Gale, the guard. But they did pick up Michi Johnson, top scorer from South Carolina, originally an Ohio State guy from 2 years previous, coming back to finish his career at Ohio State. He'll be the 2 guard. They went to Kentucky and got a promising 7-footer in Aaron Bradshaw. Went to Duke, got a promising 6'9" forward in Sean Stewart. So if they're able to put all the pieces together this coming year, Stewart and Bradshaw, former McDonald's All-Americans, they've got talent. It's just putting all the pieces together, and we'll see if Diebler can do that this upcoming season. Tough schedule. They're going to have to play Kentucky in the CBS Classic like they always do, probably a game at Texas A&M. Going to open the season against Texas in Las Vegas in early November. That'll be a fun game. And then I believe everybody in the Big Ten will have to go to the West Coast for a 2-game swing. And I think they have to go out and play USC and UCLA, who are both predicted to be pretty good this upcoming season. So, with this transfer portal, you can go from really, really far down to really, really far up in a hurry if you are able to buy the right players with NIL money. And, Ohio State, I'd say, is middle of the road on that. And we'll see if they can put all those pieces together.
Yeah, the transfer portal is kind of like the stock market of college football and basketball. You never know who's up or down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. And, you can get an instant fix, but, the flip side of that is you have to make sure whoever you bring in is a good culture fit. You can't just add somebody because they're a great football player or a great basketball player. I mean, you can get away with it sometimes, but you can also bring somebody in who can be a malcontent, who can create issues in your locker room, in your clubhouse, and you don't want that. So, again, you want somebody with great work ethic, somebody that is obviously a great player within that sport, but is also a good person, good student, and somebody who's going to do right by the new university and its fan base and do everything they can to help that team win. So, you want to help people get where they want to be. Everybody wants to play in the NBA or in the NFL, but only a small percentage of guys will make it. Really come down to it. Ohio State's had guys who started 3 seasons who never got a sniff in the NFL. And, then you'll have a guy who comes in, has one great season, gets drafted in the first round, and goes on and plays 8 years in the NFL. I mean, you just can never predict how something's going to go. I would have thought Fields would have been a great NFL quarterback. And after his first, what has it been, 3 years, it really didn't work out for him in Chicago. Maybe a change of scenery with Pittsburgh will help him achieve what he should do. And Stroud obviously went out his first year and was phenomenal. So, let's see where it goes from there. But I'm excited to see obviously what happens. With both OSU football predicted number 1, number 2 going into the season, and basketball predicted in the top 15 in some polls already for the upcoming season.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with the football program and basketball program for Ohio State. But I do wish the Bears didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater on Justin Fields.
Well,
But at the same time, you got Caleb Williams. So
Caleb Williams, and they've surrounded him with some receiver help that Fields never really had. And offensive line was just a terrible unit there for the Bears here the last few years. And when you play a lot of your games in that climate, it's hard for a quarterback to establish anything. So, you see obviously guys that play in Minnesota, they put up big numbers playing inside, and guys that play in Chicago sometimes struggle with that. So I guess we'll see if the change of scenery to Pittsburgh will be the cure for Fields. If not, he'll probably be a free agent after this upcoming season and be looking for work somewhere else.
That's for sure. Maybe in like Las Vegas, because their quarterback. Yeah, that quarterback situation's a cluster. I mean, the Bears QB situation, it's just not so good. I mean, the only guy I could think of that really succeeded was Sid Luckman. That's it. I mean, George Blanda couldn't succeed at the Bears, but he succeeded at the Oilers and the Raiders in the AFL days. And when after the AFL switched with the NFL in 1970.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a rough go there in Chicago, other than the McMahon years. And maybe with Rex Grossman, they made that one Super Bowl and lost to Peyton Manning. That was, that's been about it.
Yeah, that's like the only year where Rex Grossman was there for a full season at the Bears. The other years he wasn't there for a full year. He was there like for 4 games, 7 games, like good grief. But as we wrap up episode 32 of the Jacksonian with Steve Helwagen, You got any final thoughts for the show before we go?
Just this time of year, we're kind of gearing up for the season ahead. We cover football camps in the month of June. They'll have prospects come in and working out both basketball and football, and we'll be trying to cover that. And that's what we do at Bucknuts. We cover recruiting pretty hard with 24/7 Sports. We've got an outstanding recruiting editor in Bill Kurlick, and he works with Alan True and Tom Loy, our 24/7 Sports experts. I work with Dave Biddle and Patrick Murphy on the Bucknuts site to provide coverage of the football and basketball teams. And right now is that time of year where we're just kind of gearing up for the season ahead. I mean, the 9 months from mid-July to the end of the spring in mid-April, those are the roughest months of the year. And these months, May and June, are supposed to be time when we can enjoy our time off. But there's always news that's breaking at Ohio State. There's always something happening around the football and basketball programs, and we do everything we can to try and stay on top of it.
Well, friends, you can check out Steve Helwagen on X.com. You can check him out on Bucknuts, on YouTube, and on the website, and on Instagram. You can also check him out every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Buckeyes Live at the Voice of College Football for Ohio State with Bart Rogers, Tony Girdman at Buckeye Huddle, and Kevin Noon at Buckeye Huddle. And this is Jackson Johnson wishing you all a very good afternoon, and to stay safe, stay cool, stay away from that pollen, and check me out right here on YouTube, X, Instagram, and Threads, where I just go over some of the updates on who's coming on the Jacksonian, and I go over my takes on what's going on in college football, NFL, and whatever else is going on in this crazy, crazy world. So stay safe, stay away from that pollen, and get ready for swimming time. Stay safe, everybody.